Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. Good to have you with us here on this Monday afternoon. We are broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at KSC, joining you once again on a overcast day here on Florida's Space Coast, but a little more sunshine here in the Sunshine State and some rays of hope that SpaceX may have clear enough paths ahead of them that they are able to launch the Starlink 6-92 mission. Coming up here in just shy of an hour. Let's hold on this wide shot here for just a second to the folks in the back. You can see every so often as the clouds race across Florida's space coast, just some little pockets of blue sky dotting across this otherwise overcast afternoon. Meteorologists with the 45th Weather Squadron did suggest a 90% chance for favorable weather at liftoff today. So hopefully that is a good enough possibility that SpaceX can thread the needle and fly this Falcon 9 on a southeasterly trajectory once it does depart from the pad. Let's take a look at the satellite view of Florida, courtesy of the GOES East satellite. Showing this loop here as we're coming up on sunset. That's the darkness descending over Florida that you see there in the weather loop. Cloudy skies streaming across Florida, but again, the meteorologist did not list the cumulus cloud rule as a potential showstopper for today's mission. So these clouds may obscure folks' view of the launch if you're trying to catch this with your own eyes here in either Brevard County or elsewhere in central Florida, but may not be thick enough clouds to stymie a launch the Falcon 9 rocket itself. Meteorologists did list upper level wind shear and boost recovery weather as highlighted watch items in their additional risk criteria on a low to moderate potential interference on a low, moderate, high scale. All that being said, the clock continues to roll. Just about 57 minutes here before the planned launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. We've already seen a little bit of venting from the strong back, which is certainly a good visual indication that SpaceX is within an hour of a launch attempt. Usually around the time that we start to see this venting, it'll taper off as we get closer to the point at which the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load, which will happen in less than 20 minutes from now. As we're getting going here today, I want to thank the nearly 900 of you who are watching along with us live this afternoon. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button on this live stream, share the stream as well. Helps some more folks find their way into our live launch coverage. We're also joined once again by our moderators here today. Looks like we've got Jeff Hansen holding down the fort, potentially solo, just scrolling through. Nope, we've got Rick Donner alongside Jeff. Not sure if Astro Joe is back for more fun today, but if you do see him or any of the other mods cruise on in throughout the course of the coverage, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. You can help make the mods' jobs that much easier just by following the rules of our live chat. We ask that you post your message in English so that the mods can respond as appropriate. Also, that you don't delve into overt politics or religion in your messaging. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just ask that you don't create a huge block of them, so it takes up a large chunk of the live stream here. And last but certainly not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated with, and we'll all get along swimmingly. We've got the usual crew out and about helping us with our coverage today. The man in the chair is Mr. Stephen Young, our editor here at Spaceflight now. Adam has been busy amid the breezy conditions, getting all the cameras ready. We'll support our prime tracking of the Falcon 9 rocket if it is able to launch today. John Pisani also along for the ride as well, bouncing between helping out with cameras and the technical aspects of the show. If you're not following our photographers on X, you can find them with their handles here on the screen. Our other photographer, Michael Kane, is at MD Kane Jr. Adam is at A Burn NYC, and John is at John Pisani Photo. We'll also have tracking assistance by our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C and J Images. Given the amount of cloud cover today, this launch will likely not be too visible from further south in Brevard County. So if you don't see the usual tracking views from our friend Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions, that would be why. This and every other live launch opportunity are made possible in no small part thanks to our wonderful channel members here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Mike D, Glenn Ashworth, Butterfly, Glamper Jan, Cobra Emergency, and many, many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Last little bit of housekeeping here with 52 minutes on the clock. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space or spaceflight, or just want to offer a little bit of support today, you can follow the lead of Jeff Hansen and use the YouTube Super Chat feature to have your comment or query elevated for discussion, assuming, of course, that it is appropriate for discussion. Not only will he be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. Jeff Hansen says, "Go Kennedy, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go Starlink. Godspeed 1067." 1067 is the tail number for the first stage booster that is flying this mission here today. Starlink 6-92, that is. Can't really see it this far away, but for those who are able to head over to Port Canaveral once this booster comes back into port, you got a phone with a good zoom on it or a nice telephoto lens for your camera or a pair of binoculars, you'll be able to spot a little crown icon atop the number 67 near the top of the booster, indicating that it is either the king or the queen of the Falcon boosters, however you want to think about that. But it is the most often flown of the Falcon 9 first stages. Set to break another record when it launches here in 15 minutes, making a record-setting 30-second flight as SpaceX continues on its path to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights each. It has the same goal for the payload fairings, with at least one fairing, if I recall correctly, having already flown for a 33rd time. But SpaceX doesn't often talk about its fairings explicitly, so it's a little bit harder to track that one. Usually the fairing reuse comes up during missions for customer payloads, not the Starlink constellation. So, for instance, with tomorrow's launch of the NROL 77 flight from Space Launch Complex 40, should get an update on the reuse for those payload fairings. Our thanks as well to K2 Hat for a $2 super chat. Thanks, K2. Good to see you back again today. K2 says, good luck today and tomorrow too. Hi from Miko. Soul Seeing has been a member with us now for 3 months at the mission specialist level. Appreciate you hanging with us. Also, thanks to channel member Daniel H for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Daniel. And to our 5 newest gifted members, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Daniel in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month you were just gifted. Last little bit from the chat for now. Lloyd Green with a generous $10 super chat. Thank you, Lloyd. Appreciate your support today. SpaceX is now just about 10 minutes away from making the determination on whether they are ready to proceed into fueling the Falcon 9 rocket. As we get ready to hopefully start ticking through the milestones for fueling, let's go ahead and remind you what those are specifically. Talk about our countdown timeline here. Generally speaking, T minus 38 minutes is the point in the count when SpaceX will make the call on the start of prop load, but if they are in a good position to do so, they can make this call earlier than that. Once tanking begins, it starts off at the T minus 35-minute mark with the loading of liquid oxygen on board the booster and RP1, a rocket grade kerosene, on board both the booster as well as the upper stage. Half an hour before takeoff, the cryogenic helium load for the rocket's first stage begins. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes after that. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP1 loading wraps up. At T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is the start of the strong back chill down. SpaceX at this point in the count will thermally condition the feed lines at the pad ahead of loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. We'll see this good visual fueling milestone as the so-called big vent, which here at pad 39A starts at T minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds, lasts 4 minutes in duration. The LOX will start to flow around the 16-minute mark. Then at T minus 7 minutes, SpaceX will use some more liquid oxygen in order to thermally condition the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 booster, flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. And that'll protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the protraction of the strong back away from the rocket. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and it'll stay in that position until liftoff. Then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Same will be true on the second stage about a minute after that, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is entered into its automated startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will then verify that they are in fact go for launch T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Currently targeting that departure time at 5:26 p.m. Eastern, 22:26 UTC for our friends around the world, or just about 43.5 minutes from now. Like a scene out of Hitchcock, this view here. Just under 43 minutes to go. Just about 40 minutes remaining before the planned launch of this rocket. Taking a quick peek back at our live chat here. Want to thank Fred Merck65 for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Fred. He says, never boring. Never gets less exciting. Shout out to my wife, Kat. She's a super fan and a SpaceX junkie. Frederick and Kat are a go for launch. We'll appreciate the both of you for being with us today. Thanks for the support. Just now past the 38-minute mark with the clock still moving. So, presumably, SpaceX has given the go ahead to proceed into fueling, but we'll hold off on the confirmation of that until we get either auditory or visual cues from the pad. In the meantime, let's talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be flying once it does leave Launch Complex 39A. Talking a little trajectory here. After a liftoff from this particular launch complex, the Falcon 9 rocket set to fly on a southeasterly trajectory. Less than 3 minutes into the flight, the first and second stages will separate with the booster B-1067 aiming for its record-breaking end to its 30-second flight. With a good landing on the drone ship, A Shortfall of Gravitas. I know what some of you might be thinking, wait a second, I looked over at the SpaceX website and it says, just read the instructions. What's up with that? Well, in checking the marine data, uh, A Shortfall of Gravitas is actually the drone ship that is out there ready to support recovery for this mission, not just read the instructions as stated on the website. So, not sure if that's just a typo on SpaceX's part or if the decision to shift which drone ship would be supporting this mission was just made at a later time and the website was not updated. But here you go. In addition to the booster recovery, as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, SpaceX is also keen on getting those fairing halves back. And as we said, they are also looking to certify them for up to 40 flights each. Once down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, the fairing halves will be brought aboard a SpaceX recovery vessel, then brought back through Port Canaveral, where they will be offloaded and then taken off to the Hangar X site, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. just under 35 minutes on the clock now. Clock still moving, so presumably SpaceX is now fueling its Falcon 9 rocket there at the pad. We're going to be watching for those telltale signs of fueling. If you look near the base of the rocket, you can see just a thin, almost white line that runs perpendicular to the rocket itself, kind of near where the strong back starts to taper in. It's right around that point where we'll start to see a frost line form as the super cold, densified liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the rocket's booster. And may also see some venting near the base of the rocket. Should see some vapor in that area of the vehicle as well. And it does appear as though we're starting to see some of those signs I was just mentioning, which means SpaceX is in fact fueling its Falcon 9 rocket there at the pad and is locking into that T0 time of 5:26 p.m. Eastern, 22:26 UTC. Taking a live look right now at the Soyuz spacecraft as it's set to undock, concluding Expedition 73 and beginning Expedition 74. Take a look inside the International Space Station now. The man in the center is the newly minted ISS commander. That is NASA astronaut Mike Fink. This Soyuz spacecraft is set to undock at 8:41 p.m. Eastern, 7:41 p.m. Central Time. NASA astronaut Johnny Kim will return to Earth alongside two of his cosmonaut colleagues. One cool thing to note about this particular moment in time before the Soyuz spacecraft, Soyuz MS-27, undocks is this is the first time that all of the ports at the International Space Station have visiting vehicles at them. First in the now little more than 25 years of continuous human inhabitants of the International Space Station that this has happened. Just wanted to bring you these live pictures. And we'll go back to our coverage of the Falcon 9 right now. But just as one final note again, the undocking of this Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft is set for 8:41 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern, 7:41 p.m. 30 seconds Central Time. The return to Earth landing set to occur a little bit after midnight on Tuesday the 2nd, or Tuesday the 9th, I should say. Meanwhile, bringing attention back here to the Falcon 9 rocket, 26 and a half minutes on the clock. At this point in the countdown, SpaceX has already loaded liquid oxygen on board cryogenic helium, much the pressure vessels for the first stage, and is just about to get underway for the same process on the second stage. T minus 22 minutes, 21 seconds in counting. We're nearing the start of the big event here at the pad. SpaceX will thermally condition the feed lines ahead of second stage LOX load beginning. Taking a moment to talk about the payload on board this mission here today. Got 29 of SpaceX's Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites that are set to deploy into low Earth orbit. By our count, this includes the 3,000th Starlink satellite that SpaceX has launched just this year alone. Taking a look at the Starlink manufacturing process as shared by SpaceX. This mission here today also set to be the 116th launch of a series of Starlink satellites so far this year. Starlink satellites are considerably lighter than the predecessor of the V2 minis. These are the optimized versions, clocking at about 1,267 pounds or 575 kilograms versus around 1,760 pounds or 800 kilograms for the earlier iteration. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 meters or excuse me, 30 meters or 100 feet. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. Built up in Redmond, Washington at the facilities you're seeing here in this video. Big vent is now underway as well. These satellites will be deployed at about 168 miles, 271 kilometers altitude at a 43-degree inclination. This vent will last about 4 minutes in duration, wrapping up at roughly T minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds, setting the stage for liquid oxygen to start flowing aboard the rocket's upper stage. Just under 17 minutes remaining in the count. The big vent has now less than 20 seconds before it wraps up. And there's the conclusion of the big vent. Second stage lock load is now underway. Taking a look back at our live chat here with roughly 15 minutes remaining. I want to thank the more than 2,400 of you who are watching along with us live this evening. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream to allow us more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage. I also want to thank Doc Makar, apologies, Doc, but thanks for the $5 super chat. Also, thanks to Michael McGrory, one of our channel members, for the $10 super chat. Appreciate you, Michael, who says, "What was that armada of thousands of small birds racing across Kennedy about T minus 40 minutes? Never seen that before." Yeah, that was in Chuck and Jen's view, looking at the pad from their vantage point in Titusville today. Actually, we've got sort of a mini version happening right there. I am one of the furthest things from avian experts, so I'm not going to try to deign to give you a real explanation as to why the birds flock and fly in that type of almost cloud-like pattern. I'm unfortunately for you not the expert you want to go to on that, but if we do have someone in the live chat who's a little bit more read up on bird flight patterns like that, I'd love to get your thoughts. Time now T minus 12 minutes and counting. About 5 minutes from now, SpaceX will flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps of the Merlin engines at the base of the booster. Speaking of the booster, this is, of course, the record breaking 30-second flight of Beat 1067. So, in consideration of that, let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the booster history for the flight leader in SpaceX's fleet. As is the case with a number of boosters, it began flying in support of a mission to the International Space Station, which we were just seeing some live pictures from. This booster's first launch, though, was a Cargo Dragon mission, CRS-22, which launched back on June 3rd of 2021. That was followed up by another mission in November of that year, this time a crewed flight to the station. It was Crew 3 launching aboard Dragon Endurance. Communication satellite Turksat B lifted off on December 19th of 2021. Coming into April of 2022, that was the launch of the Crew 4 mission to the ISS, launching Dragon Freedom to the orbiting outpost. Crew 4 notable in that it was the last commercial Crew Dragon mission, which did not include a Russian cosmonaut. One last Dragon flight for this booster, CRS-25, took off on July 14th of 2022. This booster launched its first batch of Starlink satellites with the Group 4-34 mission on September 19th, 2022. Followed that up with the launch of the Hotbird 13G mission on behalf of Eutelsat. Up next, a couple of satellites for SES based in Luxembourg. The first couple of O3B mPOWER satellites. A trio of Starlinks would follow that. Starlink 5-2, 5-5, and 5-9. That was followed up by the Satria mission, launching on June 18th for Indonesian telecommunications company PSN. Back to Starlink land we go for a little bit. We had Starlink 6-10, 6-22, 6-29, 6-35. Turning the page here, we had the launch of the Telkomsat Meraputa on behalf of another Indonesian telecommunications company. Back to Starlink land we go for a few more. 6-45, 6-55, 8-5, 8-3. That was followed up by a launch for the European Commission, the Galileo FM 26 and 32 flight, lifting off on September 18th. In fact, another pair of Galileo satellites are set to take flight later this month, not on a Falcon 9 rocket, but in fact on an Ariane 6 launching from French Guiana. Up next for this booster was KoreaSat 6A, followed up by, you guessed it, more Starlink missions, which will carry us through to today. Starlink 6-10 to close out 2024 for this booster, and then all the Starlink missions that it has launched this year so far. Need to do some reshuffling the next time we see this booster fly. Just about. Starlink 10-17 was the last a little bit of a typo there, actually. That was October 19th, not December, of course. Can't see missions into the future now. Just under 6 minutes remaining in the count. At this point, SpaceX has already started to flow that LOX through the plumbing and turbo pumps to protect its engines. And at this point of the count, the first stage kerosene tank should also be full. Should be getting live views from SpaceX along with mission audio here in the next about 30 seconds.
Tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
Just starting to get the mission audio here from SpaceX, as well as pad level views of the rocket. So we've got Navy Vet 4518 joining us from the Star of the Seas cruise ship out in the Bahamas.
Strong back retract has started.
And row 4WR watching from the UK. Let us know where you're watching from today, whether you've got hopes of seeing this Falcon 9 rocket if you're close enough to Cape Canaveral and the Kennedy Space Center, or if, like NavVet, you're on a cruise ship watching, or elsewhere around the world. Coming upon 4 minutes before liftoff, we should see momentarily the clamp arms. Actually, you can see one of the clamp arms has fully retracted away from the rocket. Second arm opening up now as well. The strong back will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. Three minutes and counting.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call from SpaceX. We should hear a similar call now in about a minute regarding second stage LOX load. T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Seeing here the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX releases the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad.
Ground gas closeouts.
And there's that call regarding gas closeouts. T-minus 1 minute and counting.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we are just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to confirm that they are in fact go for launch.
LD, go for launch.
And with that good word, we're approaching 30 seconds from the departure of this Falcon 9 rocket. 30 seconds.
T-minus 30 seconds.
$15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-92 mission. A record-setting flight for this first stage booster.
Falcon 9 supersonic.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Max Q.
A good flight of the Falcon 9 rocket so far, passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Coming up next will be the thermal conditioning of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's upper stage.
And back chill.
There's that good call out. SpaceX is coming to a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, followed by stage separation, and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. Rocket continuing on a southeasterly trajectory, pulling further and further away from Florida's Space Coast. Bit of a tricky tracking day with the clouds, but Adam's doing a stellar job here, as is the rest of our team. Here you see MECO.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
And back startup.
Coming up to fairing jettison here momentarily. There go the payload fairings.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a good view of those 29 Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will be recovered a little bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship. A little bit hard to see with the clouds, but you saw a nice glint of the sun hitting those fairing halves for just a second there. Unfortunately, just too many clouds at this point to continue tracking from the ground, though we'll continue to scan the skies and see if we might be able to spot a sign of the booster entry, but I wouldn't hold your breath. It's just a bit too cloudy today. So we'll rely on the SpaceX onboard cameras for the views from here on. Just about 4.5 minutes into the mission at this point. Coming up next will be the start of the 3-engine entry burn. SpaceX begins to slow down the booster, B-1067. Targets a touchdown on the drone ship A Shortfall of Gravitas, positioned out in the Atlantic Ocean. Those puffs that you're seeing occasionally from the booster are the cold gas thrusters, which allow the vehicle to adjust its attitude or positioning, making sure it's in the right orientation before the start of the entry burn. Seeing a number of folks in the live chat who are here with us in Brevard County say it was unfortunately too cloudy to see even on the 528 bridge in Merritt Island. So sorry to hear that, folks, but hopefully we gave you some good views to make you feel like you were seeing it with your own eyes. And not just through a screen, obviously. Coming up on 6 minutes, we're now roughly 10 seconds away from the start of the entry burn beginning.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup. Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Good entry burn, and the call you just heard, the safing of the FTS on stage 2. That is the flight termination system, no longer needed at this point in the count. Next milestone for SpaceX, of course, is the start of the single-engine
Stage 1 transonic.
landing burn, as the booster slows down to below the speed of sound. Landing burn set to begin in less than 20 seconds.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And for a record-breaking 30-second time, B-1067 has had a good landing.
MPAC shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And And with a good confirmation of a nominal orbit insertion, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 rocket will now coast until T plus 53 minutes and 52 seconds. There will be a 2-second burn to circularize its orbit, and then the 29 Starlink satellites will be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 59 seconds. Don't go anywhere. We do have a roundup of all of our various live views from around the Space Coast of liftoff, so we're getting those prepared for you here momentarily. In the interim, we'll go to our mission stats as they currently stand. With a good liftoff and landing of the booster, that was the now record-setting 30-second flight of 1067. That marked SpaceX's 575th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 158th of the year so far. This was the company's 510th Falcon booster reflight, with the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 167th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 124th from Pad 39A for SpaceX. And this was also the 219th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 136th good touchdown on the drone ship, A Shortfall of Gravitas, and marked the 448th drone ship landing for SpaceX and the 546th booster landing for SpaceX as well. Also, the 547th overall booster landing, including, of course, Never Tell Me the Odds from Blue Origin. And with some industry stats, this was the 104th orbital launch from Florida, the 167th from U.S. soil, the 182nd from a U.S. rocket company, the 288th orbital launch attempt around the world. There have been 6 launch failures so far this year. Here is now look at the Falcon bar chart. 158 launches, getting real close to 160. Overall look at the Cape going back to 1957. Finally, our pie chart of where things currently stand the year 2025. Just about there with the replays. I see at some point in the broadcast we were also joined by Aussie Space Girl, another one of our wonderful moderators. Appreciate you being with us here, Stephanie. It is going to be a very busy launch week for us folks, so if you haven't already, now is a great time to hit that subscribe button and make sure you've got notifications turned on. That way you'll be alerted when we are about to go live and also when we post new video content here to the channel. Coming up tomorrow afternoon, we have the launch of the NRO L-77 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and start with our launch replays, beginning with the fixed view from here at the press site as arranged by Adam. Stand by, folks. We're just working out a technical issue here. Let's try this again. moving on to the wide camera view. You'll see the rocket disappear into the clouds in this one. Off to the turn basin next. Off to the tracker from Chuck and Jen Briggs. Onto the super wide shot next. Got a nice flag shot next. And finally, the press site tracker. Coming out of this tracking video here, we'll pause, go back to the pad for a moment, and then we've got one more replay video to share with you all. As we're watching this, though, did see a comment from Gerald Russo in our live chat asking about the status of the Electron Raise and Shine mission. That launch has been delayed now to December 12th local time there in New Zealand, 10 p.m. for us here on the East Coast on the 11th. Teams of the Rocket Lab said that they delayed the mission, quote, to allow time for additional checkouts, end quote. And as we mentioned, we've got one more shot that we're readying for you. In the meantime, you may have noticed the strobing lights along the crew access tower. Those are, in fact, the fire alarm system lights going off, and that's in connection to SpaceX burning off likely some TTEP, the ignition fluid for liftoff, possibly some RP1 as well. It's quite common to see this after launches from LC-39A, so nothing to worry about from that. And for those curious about launches coming up here throughout the course of the week, you can head over at any time to our website, spaceflightnow.com, and click on the Launch Schedule tab. Got a series of Falcon 9 rockets lifting off from here in Florida, as well as over in California. Also, for those of you who are going to be in Orlando for the Space Force Association's Space Power Conference coming up on Thursday and Friday, I too will also be there. So if you do see me from a distance or we cross paths, be sure to say hello. It's always wonderful to meet our viewers out and about in the real world. Number of good panels scheduled for the week on, again, Thursday and Friday are the principal panel days. Some events for the conference are happening earlier in the week, but we'll be over there principally on Thursday and most probably on Friday as well. Got that last replay video for you ready. Let's go ahead and turn to that now. And this is in slow motion. And turning day into night, we're going to go ahead and close out the broadcast here, folks. Appreciate all of you who have been with us throughout the course of our coverage. A couple more folks to thank, though, before we go ahead and bid you all adieu. Thanks to channel member Chuck Close for a very generous $25 super chat. Thank you, Chuck. Good to see you this evening. Thanks as well to Skunk Hogger PS494 for the $10 super chat, another one of our channel members. They say, good evening. Sun finally came out just before sunset after 5 days of rain. Hope the weather holds for this evening's launch. Obviously, that message coming in before liftoff, and thankfully, things did hold out for a good liftoff. One last reminder, NROL 77, our launch tomorrow. SpaceX looking to fly that mission from Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape with a T0 liftoff right now set for 2:16 p.m. Eastern. The good news is weather is greater than 95% favorable for liftoff tomorrow, and meteorologists with the 45th Weather Squadron cite no issues. That would be showstoppers. Good news there. With all of that, want to thank our moderators who have been helping us out today. Big thanks to Rick Donner, Jeff Hansen, and Aussie Space Girl for being with us this evening. Thanks to our friends Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs for helping out with the tracking views. And excellent night's work, as always, by our Adam Bernstein and John Pisani. Thanks as well to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, who's been running the technical operations alongside John. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from. We certainly appreciate your time and attention with these missions, and we look forward to welcoming you back in when we've got another one to cover. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I am Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.